Dear learners, today we are going to discuss basic concepts to understand human rights. And the basic concepts include liberty, equality, and justice. These three things we have included in this unit. And on the issue of liberty or the concept of liberty, we are going to first of all introduce what is liberty. Then, in the light of the definitions of experts, we will try to understand its meaning. Then, the development of the concept of liberty, how it has passed through different stages. After that, we will discuss the two aspects of liberty, that is, negative and positive liberty. Then, we'll try to understand liberty in the light of the philosophical interpretation given by J.S. Mill. And then, the various dimensions of liberty we will discuss, and then we will conclude. So, in the introduction, what we are going to do, first of all, we have to understand that liberty and rights are closely linked. When we say liberty and rights are closely linked, then we should remember that both complement and supplement each other. So it means rights and liberty, they complement and supplement each other. Human rights and civil liberties are used interchangeably, meaning the same. So you will find in many parts of the world, the human rights movements or the human rights activism are also called civil liberties movement. So the civil liberties and human rights, they are used interchangeably in many parts of the world. While discussing the evolution of the concept of human rights, we noted that liberty has been an innate desire of man at all stages of its evolution. We have already discussed the evolution of the concept of human rights, and we found that from Magna Carta to the International Bill of Rights, people were emphasizing liberty, freedom at different stages. From Magna Carta, if you start, then you come to the Glorious Revolution, French Revolution. So, these liberty was emphasized, freedom was emphasized. Not only that it was individual freedom or the individual liberty, but if you see the national liberation struggles in the different parts of the world, or the national liberation struggles were also inspired by the idea of liberty and freedom, including our own national liberation struggle. We also noted that liberty, equality, and fraternity were the fascinating slogans during the French Revolution and the American War of Independence. So, liberty, equality, fraternity, these were the important or the fascinating slogans, and that inspired people to bring revolution or fight the American War of Independence. And this has been there in the different parts of the world during the national liberation struggles. Also, we noticed this. Now, we are going to understand the meaning of liberty. What do we mean by liberty? The term liberty has been derived from the Latin word liber, which means absence of restraints or free from all shackles. So, first of all, we have to see the literal meaning, and it has been taken from the term liberty, which we have in our English lexicon or in our political science dictionary. That has been derived from the Latin word liber. And what is the meaning of liber? Which means absence of restraints, which means freedom, which means free from all shackles. So, in this sense, liberty can be understood as the absence of external restrictions or restraints upon the actions, thought, and opinion and expression of individuals. it is very, very difficult. The term may seem very easy to understand, but it is rightly said, simple is complex. So that way it is very difficult to define the term liberty. Why? Because there is no agreement among scholars about the meaning, nature, and content of liberty. Since there is you will find disagreement in the literature of political science or human rights on the issue of liberty among the scholars and experts. So that is why it becomes very difficult to have a definition which is going to be acceptable to all. And it has been highlighted by Caldwell. Caldwell observes, and I quote, that liberty is a concept about whose nature men have quarreled perhaps more than about any other. Unquote. So when we are going to define liberty, this statement should be kept in mind that liberty is a concept about whose nature men have quarreled perhaps more than about any other. So this concept is it has been contested. The nature, content, scope, or the meaning. This is something of liberty that has been contested by scholars, and there is disagreement among them. Again, we should remember that the meaning of the term liberty has not been immutable. It means that according to the changing times, needs, and circumstances, the meaning of the term liberty has been also changing. It has been understood differently at different times. So the context or the time is very, very important. We cannot understand the concept of liberty or the meaning of liberty without the context and without the historical context, especially under which it was perceived, it was claimed, and it was realized. So it has been understood differently at different times. Its meaning has been changing with changing circumstances. Montesquieu observes, who is known for giving the principle of separation of powers, a celebrated political thinker. So, what he says about liberty, he said there is no word that admits of more various significations and has made more different impressions on the human mind than that of liberty. So, liberty means different to different kind of people, depending upon the culture, depending upon the challenges, depending upon the circumstances the people are facing, and then they are claiming liberty or freedom against those challenges and circumstances. And this is the reason that Montesquieu is highlighting this. Therefore, you see that when we are discussing this, that there is no agreement about the meaning of the term liberty, and you will find that there are many, many definitions that have been offered by the scholars. So that is why the meaning, nature, scope, and content of liberty, which has, that have changed with time, the evolution of the development of the concept is pertinent to discuss for clarity. So therefore, since the meaning of the term has not been immutable, there has been disagreement among the scholars and the experts or the political thinkers about the meaning, nature, content, and scope of the term liberty. So therefore, what is needed that we should try to understand the evolution or development of the concept. And when we are trying to understand the evolution of the concept of liberty, that will give us clarity. The ancient Greek philosophers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle did not accept the idea of individual liberty against the state or the city-state. We had already discussed about the organic view of a state. that a state was, according to them, a state was a natural institution, city state. As Aristotle used to believe that man is a social animal, man is a political animal, man is a gregarious animal. So it means that if we see that during the classical Greek period, you will find that the concept of individual liberty was not there. Why? Because city-state was considered as everything, and there were no rights that the people would have cited against the city-state. So this was the reason that the concept of individual liberty, in the sense that we have today, was not available. Rather, at that time, people had some vague idea of liberty or freedom, and that was very different from what we have today. For example, Socrates believed that liberty lies in obedience to the law as against the will of the ruler or the rulers. This is important to understand. For example, if we know about the history of Athens and Sparta, we can understand that Socrates was a person who was criticizing Athenian democracy, which was based on lottery system. And that's why Socrates said that, this is promoting what is called rule of ignorance. Again, it is not only about liberty. I think it is also pertinent to point out here that at that time, during the time of the Greek philosophers like Plato, Aristotle, and Socrates, democracy was not an ideal form of government. According to Aristotle, democracy was a corrupt form of government. It was not the pure form of government. Neither it was the ideal form of government. So democracy was most of the, by at that time was perceived as mobocracy. So Socrates was critical of the Athenian democracy, and that is why he was punished. And what kind of punishment was given? The charge was that he was polluting the mind of the youth in Athens, and that would have created problem as the charges were leveled against him. And finally, he was given death penalty. When he was imprisoned, Socrates was imprisoned, then his disciples, they made arrangement for his elopement from the prison. And when he was asked to elope from the prison, what did he say? And that is something very important to remind us here. That he said that, the punishment that has been given to me is not by the Athenian democracy, but it is by law. And I have to be a law-abiding citizen. So that is why since the punishment was given according to the existing law, so that is why he accepted it. And he, drank hemlock and died. So that is why it means that obedience to law was very important for them. The freedom or the liberty lies in obedience to law, according to Socrates in this sense. When we discuss Plato, on the other hand, he suggested obedience to the wisdom of the philosopher king. If an ideal state is established, in the ideal state, he wanted that there should be the rule of philosopher king. And if the rule of philosopher king is there, he wanted that he should be given freedom. The philosopher king should be given freedom to rule according to his own wisdom. And that is why neither law nor custom, tradition, anything cannot be quoted against him. So it means the wisdom of the philosopher king was something that was trusted by him, and that is why he said that in the ideal state there should be a rule of philosopher king who will rule according to his own wisdom. Aristotle also suggested obedience to the law of the city-state for a good life. We remember that Aristotle, the disciple of Plato, criticized his own master or tutor, and especially he did not agree with the ideal state, and he said that the rule of philosopher king will not be good for the city-state because, the rule of law is always better according to him. Why? Because law is impersonal, which is always better than the personal rule of the most righteous person on earth even. So that is why he wanted to develop a kind of science, we can say that Aristotle was in favor of the science of good estate or ideal estate. So he was not looking for the Superman who will make everything good. Rather, Aristotle wanted that there should be rule of law, because it is impersonal, as well as the rule of law, or the law is based on the wisdom of ages. The Greeks considered participation as citizens in the conduct of the affairs of city-state as freedom. This is again important. We all know that during the Greek period, the citizenship was restricted. It was not given to everybody. And the qualification was that the person, should have leisure, time to think upon, and that is why all people were not given citizenship. So that is why participation in the affairs of the city-state as free citizens, that was the ultimate kind of freedom, according to the Greek political thinkers like Aristotle, Socrates, and Plato. Now we have been saying that, the meaning of the word, or the scope, content, scope and the content of the, term liberty has been changing with changing times and circumstances. We find during the medieval period, it acquired different meaning. And liberty meant, especially during the medieval period, when especially when the Dark Age was there, or when Christianity became the main religion over there and it dominated the mind and psyche of the public. At that time, liberty meant spiritual salvation. It was salvation that was considered as freedom or liberty. And salvation was salvation of soul. So it was a spiritual dimension was added to the meaning of liberty, and it was perceived that spiritual salvation was possible only by following the biblical path. So that is why, that was the meaning of liberty during the medieval period. In the modern period, liberty was certain rights of individuals against the arbitrary powers of the king and feudal lords. You see that when the Dark Age was there in Europe, at that time, it was Christianity that was, Catholic Christianity that was determining everything. The truth was what Christianity used to believe. No thinking contrary to the biblical thinking was allowed. And that's why many geographers, scientists, they were executed, because they said something which was not in consonance with the teachings of Bible, and that's why the charges of blasphemy were leveled against them and they were killed, executed. Brutal punishment was given to them. Many of them were burnt alive. So, that was the period of Dark Age. And at that time, you see, the spiritual salvation was the ultimate goal of life. So, what happened that people got fed up with this kind of thing, and you'll find that Renaissance came, then the Reformation in the church, and then you'll find Enlightenment. So, this is the sequence in the history of, political thought in Europe. And what happened that after that? In the modern period, liberty was certain rights of individuals against the arbitrary powers of the king, feudal lords, and you can add papacy. So the three reactionary medieval institutions, that was absolutist monarchy, all powerful feudal lords in their own fiefdoms, and the papacy that was, claiming the ultimate loyalty of the people, these three institutions were responsible for restricting freedom of individuals or the liberties of individuals. So that is why at that time, you see, the movement for liberty included that the people should be free from the shackles of these three reactionary institutions. Liberty was also claimed against the church's undue interference in people's personal or private affairs. Church was trying to regulate the people's personal and private affairs. And that's why, people were fed up with the papacy as well. They did not want undue interference in the personal, spaces. Means, if church or state or whatever the feudal lords, if they were trying to invade the personal spaces of the individuals, there was some kind of reaction against it. And that is why people wanted that liberty should be given to them against these three important institutions at that time who were responsible for restricting freedom and liberties of the people. So that's why you will find all the revolution that were also called bourgeois revolution. They emphasized on liberty, especially civil and political liberty, where they wanted to make king or the rulers accountable for their deeds. They were not ready to accept the claim of their absolute power, and that too when the king was claiming that it is divine. On the other hand, they also wanted that the feudal lords who were all powerful in their respective fiefdoms, they should not be there because they were restricting the freedom of the individuals and the freedom of the movements of goods and services. And again, papacy we have already mentioned. So that is why you see the liberty, equality, fraternity, these things were demanded. After that, we will find that the situation changed. And later on, after industrial revolution, people started demanding economic liberty, freedom from hunger, from exploitation of the capitalist class, all these, freedom from poverty, these things were emphasized. And ultimately, the socialist movement, they emphasized that these rights or freedom should be accepted and recognized. The contemporary discourse on liberty claims the representative government, freedom of conscience, and free flow of goods and services in a globalized world. So, what is happening today? The contemporary discourse on human rights or the contemporary discourse on liberty and freedom that we see. We should remember that liberty and the human rights or the rights, they go together and they are interchangeably also used and they overlap. So that is why we have been discussing liberty and rights together here. The contemporary discourse on liberty claims the representative government, freedom of conscience, and free flow of goods and services in a globalized world. So what has happened that the world has become a global village, and that is why in the name of freedom or liberty, what is being demanded that there should not be any kind of tariff barrier, import duties and all. There should be complete freedom of goods and services, the movement of the goods and services. So that way, that is according to the globalized world, this kind of liberty is being emphasized. But this kind of, the demand for liberty is being resisted also by many countries. The contemporary discourse on liberty also brings into discussion issues like multiculturalism, freedom to follow natural sexual inclinations, freedom from hunger, violence, poverty, etc. You see that these days, when we say, for example, from the ancient times to the medieval, even to the modern times, what has happened that what has happened that the male and female relation was something. The male and female sexual relation was considered as natural and biological, and all other sexual inclinations, they were considered as crime. So that is why the criminalization of these kind of things were there. Criminalization of the other sexual inclinations. But now what is happening that in the name of liberty, people are saying that these, sexual inclinations are also natural. And that is why the people should be given freedom to go according to their own natural sexual inclinations. On the other hand, the globalization has also led to what is called free flow of goods and services. So the diaspora in different countries of the world, migrants in the different countries of the world, and the issue of their identity, the issue of their cultural aspirations, they are also becoming important. So that's why in the name of freedom and liberty, people are also demanding what is called multiculturalism, that the diaspora, settled in the different parts of the world, they should be given freedom to follow their own culture, tradition, and all. So that's why these issues are being highlighted. Now, after discussing this development of liberty, let us discuss some definitions of liberty. How to define liberty? That is of course problematic, and that is why we are not going to have only one definition, but in the light of many definitions that have been offered by the different scholars, we are trying to understand the meaning of the term liberty. So first of all, we are going to take up the definition offered by G.D.H. Cole. G.D.H. Cole says, and I quote, "Liberty is the freedom of the individual to express without external hindrances to his personality." Unquote. You see, so G.D.H. Cole believes that what is liberty? It means that the absolute freedom of the individual to express without external hindrances to his personality. So all external hindrances are considered as bad. So liberty here is identified with what we call absence of restrictions, limitations, or restraints. Then we have the definition offered by Robert Seeley. Robert Seeley says, and I quote, "Liberty is the opposite of over-government." Unquote. One line definition, but it is also one of the best definitions so far as the definition of liberty is concerned. And he says liberty is the opposite of over-government. Unquote. So it means when the government is trying to poke its nose or trying to curtail the freedom of the people, and if it is trying to regulate the behavior of the people in all spaces, that is bad according to him. This can be supplemented by the famous quote attributed to Thoreau. Thoreau says that, and I quote, "that government is best which governs least." So that government is best which governs least is the the definition or the statement given by Thoreau. So here what happens then when if we take into account the definition of Seeley and Thoreau, we find that they are trying to visualize a laissez-faire state where the least interference of the state is there in the personal and private affairs of the people. So in this sense, what will happen? A laissez-faire state can guarantee this kind of liberty where it is not going to intervene in the personal and the private affairs of the people. So a state will become a police state where law and order will be the responsibility of the state, and the people will be free in their other activities, economic and other activities especially. So that is why that government is best which govern the least, or liberty is the opposite of over government. It means what is being understood that government or state pose threat to enjoyment of liberty, and that is why safeguards are being demanded against government or state, and that is why it is being emphasized that liberty is the opposite of over government. So again, this is a kind of negative concept of liberty. Massimo Salvadori, he has offered a very good definition, and he maintains, and I quote, "Liberty is free choice. Liberty is free choice, each individual's own decision concerning his own course of action. It belongs to himself, not to the external world that surrounds him." Unquote. So what he says that liberty is free choice. each individual's own decision concerning his own course of action. So that is why you see neither society nor state should try to guide him, guide the individual that what to do and what not to do. It belongs to himself, not to the external world that surrounds him. So it means in his own domain, in his own personal or private domain, individual is free. After this, the Gettel says, and the definition of Gettel, I quote, liberty is the positive power of doing or enjoying those things which are worthy of enjoyment and work. It is important, unquote. Liberty is the positive power of doing. It is the positive power of doing. Mind the word positive. Or enjoying those things which are worthy of enjoyment and work. So ultimately, who will decide that what is the things that are worthy of enjoyment and work? It means some kind of external regulation is being accepted, which is implicit here. It is implicit that some reasonable restriction can be imposed because only those things can be enjoyed which are worthy of enjoyment. So it means the freedom will be limited. It will not be a license to do whatever one wants. So it is a positive view of liberty. Now after that, T.H. Green defines liberty as, he says, I quote, freedom is the positive power of doing or enjoying something worth doing or enjoying, and that too something we do or enjoy with others. Again important, this is being given to a social man who is living in the society with others. So that is why we have to be conscious of the fact that freedom is the positive power of doing or enjoying something worth doing or enjoying, and that too something we do or enjoy with others. So it means that it is rightly said that liberty is the only thing that you cannot enjoy unless you are willing to give it to others. So that is why while enjoying our own freedom or liberty, we have to also think of the liberty and freedom of others. Again, liberty is not a license to do what one pleases to do. After that, we are going to have the definition of C.D. Burns. C.D. Burns says, and I quote, liberty is to grow to one's natural height and to develop one's ability. Unquote. So liberty is to grow to one's natural. It means it demands certain positive conditions. Only then a person will grow to his fullest. So to grow to one's natural height and to develop one's ability. So it means that the positive socio-economic and other conditions must be there. That should be created by the society and the state. Then only the person can develop his or her personality to the fullest and grow to one's natural height and develop one's ability to develop his own potential to the fullest extent. So again, this is the positive concept of liberty. With this, dear learners, I am going to wind up this lecture, and in the next lecture we are going to continue with the concept of liberty. It is one of the most important concepts to understand human rights. So that is why we will continue in the next class on the concept of liberty. Thank you.